Hey class, so for today's assignment we are going to actually be working on colorizing an old photograph. So you can see here that we've got this nice black and white photo of some farmers in Kansas during the Great Depression. And we are going to be using adjustment layers and selection tools to add color to this image to make it look as though it were a colored photo. Back in the day when black and white film was sort of the only option, sometimes people would go in and using watercolors sort of add color into their images, and it gives this look that the colors aren't totally photorealistic. They're a little bit faded looking, maybe a little bit more saturated than usual in real life. But it was an effect that people loved, and we're going to kind of be going through to do that same effect, but using Photoshop instead of watercolors. So let's go ahead and start off by going to Schoology, and you'll notice in the assignments folder that I've added in 3 new assignments called Independent 1, 2, and 3. These ones are what you're going to be working on for the next week and a half, and you should shoot to finish about one of these per class period. I realize that it might take you a little bit longer than one class period for each one, but that should sort of be your goal, all right? So as soon as you finish the first one, turn it in, then you can move on to the second one. They're mostly just self-guided. Okay, we'll start looking in here. We're going to just download this image. So I'm going to open it up, hit download, and then we're going to come into Photoshop. And I'll start by just opening up that photo I just downloaded. Okay, and it opens up as a JPEG for us as a background object, and we don't actually need to duplicate this background because this assignment is going to be using adjustment layers, which is a type of mask, and it's non-destructive. Everything we do in this photo should be non-destructive, so we shouldn't actually have to even touch this background at all. So we don't need to start off, we don't need to duplicate it in this case. Okay, so with our clones assignment, we've talked about masks and how they're so great because it's non-destructive, you can always go back and change it, and we use the white and black paintbrush to sort of paint things in and out. As we use adjustment layers today, it's going to be the same principle. And we're also going to be adding in a new tool, which are our selection tools. The selection tools are up here at the top. We've got these 3 different options. You've got the marquee selections, the lasso selections, and then the quick select tool. We're going to be using primarily quick select today, but they all do the same thing. They just make their selection in a different way. So what is a selection? Let's talk about this. Let's start with this one. So when you make a selection in Photoshop, basically you get this little dotted line that blinks that is called what people call it marching ants or dancing ants. And you can see it kind of looks like it's moving little ants in a line. So what a selection does is it tells Photoshop that whatever effects you're applying, whatever you're trying to do, it is only going to work inside of the box that you have just drawn. And so these selection tools are important because sometimes we need to make the selection in a different shape. If we need to make a square shape selection, obviously the marquee is going to be the easiest. In the case of what we're doing today, though, we're going to be selecting like these shapes like this melon and the carrots and her dress and a lot of irregular shapes, so that square is not going to work very well for us, and we're going to use the quick select tool. The way that the quick select tool works, and you can do this with me, is we're going to select the sky here first. But the quick select is a type of brush, and it can either add to a selection or subtract from a selection. And basically, it's sort of like a semi-smart tool where you just click and drag as though you're trying to paint something, and it will look for edges on objects and try to snap to the edge. So you can see that it did a pretty good job around this guy's head, sort of made this selection around his ear, but then it accidentally grabbed some of his shirt too, because his shirt is a pretty close color to the color of the sky. So that's how the quick selection works. So I'm going to just go through here and I'm going to try and select up all the sky just by kind of like painting over, just clicking and dragging as if this were a paintbrush. You can see it does a pretty good job at getting my selection mostly good. So down here you can see it kind of came down here. Now, there are a few issues though. Obviously it got some of his shirt and actually ended up, it looks like it got all of his head, which I don't want. If you ever select something that you don't want using the quick select tool, I'm going to just hold down the Option key on my keyboard and unselect those bits that were not meant to be selected. As I kind of paint over them, you'll notice it pushes my selection back out so that, once again, I only have the sky selected. I think that looks pretty good. Maybe this part of his shirt I'll take off too. So you want to look for all the selection parts that you can to try and make it as good as you can with this, but the quick select tool is pretty quick and dirty, and it's not going to be the best thing ever. So just get it mostly good, and then we'll move on. Okay, after you have made your selection of the sky, you'll notice that around their hair, for example, that's sort of a tricky texture to select so cleanly. On the side of his head, it's really easy because it's just plain sky behind his ear here, but his hair is a little bit more complex. And we can kind of like select more of it or less of it, but it sort of gives us a rough edge, and as we all know, hair doesn't really have like one solid line that it works off of. So what we're going to do is we are going to use a special kind of setting that's going to refine the edge of this, and it's going to try and look for different tones. So I'm going to come up here and click on the Select and Mask button that's in my options bar. This is only going to appear if I have a selection made. And maybe I'll kind of go through and make sure her hair, yeah, I've got a pretty good, it's a pretty good cutout. You can see it's not perfect, but not bad. So I'll click this button, and I'm going to zoom out here using Command minus so we can kind of have a better idea of what's going on. Okay, so you can see that it is kind of showing me what it's going to cut out for me right here. And you can see that it's mostly just sky, but there is some of their hair that's sort of selected, and some other, like the carrot tops has a little bit of this. So we're going to come over on this side options, and we're going to check this box that says Smart Radius. And that means that we're just going to have the computer trying to find edges of things as we try to refine this. Then our radius slider, we're going to slide up to maybe 3-ish. I would say between 3 and 5. You kind of just do it and figure out what you think looks best on yours. And then the smoothing, we're going to scoot up to maybe about 5 as well. 3 to 5 also there. Okay. And once we have this, we're going to go ahead and click OK. And that did refine our selection a little bit. It doesn't look like the dancing ants are too much different, but they are a little bit different. So we're doing pretty good. Okay. That is our selection tool, and as we go throughout this project, you're going to do that same step over and over and over. You're going to choose something that is supposed to be one color, you're going to select it, we'll do the select and mask, and then we'll move on to adding our adjustment layer for color. To do this, down in our layers panel, you're going to click on this little half white, half black circle, and this is where you store all your adjustment layers. You can see that there's quite a few of them in here, and they all do different things. But basically, these are just masks that sort of add like different effects onto your photo, sort of like a filter on Instagram or Snapchat. So I'm going to choose the one that says solid color, and you'll notice that what that does is it adds a new layer above my photograph, and on the mask that's attached to my layer that it just added, it shows kind of what I have cut out. So I had all the sky selected, so the sky is all white. Next to my mask, I have this little box that is asking what color I want this layer to be, and right now it's white, so you can see that in my image, I have the sky has just turned flat white. Obviously we don't want this because that looks kind of goofy. So this little color picker popped up here, and I'm going to choose kind of a blue color that I think looks pretty good. Don't stress about this too much. You're just going to choose a color, and we can always go back and edit this later. So choose something you think is pretty good and click OK and kind of check it out. Now, if you look at this, you can see this looks a little bit dumb because the blue is flat and we can't see like the sky anymore or the clouds. It just looks like they're totally cut out with scissors. So to fix this, we're going to use what are called our layer styles. Right here are the blending modes for our layers. Right here on your layers panel, you have this drop down menu that says normal. These are your blending modes, and if I pop this open, you can see there's a lot of different ways to blend layers together. But basically what this does is it changes the transparency of a layer without making it disappear. They all do different things, and feel free to take a second to try them out, see kind of what they do. But the one we're going to be using for this assignment is called Overlay. It's right here in the middle. And when I choose this, what happens is it takes that layer and it sort of makes it somewhat transparent so we can see the layer underneath it. So now you can start to see kind of, the clouds that were going on. We see those telephone wires in the background. It just basically makes this layer transparent so it interacts with the sky. So that's how we're going to colorize this photograph. So now we're going to move on. I'll do another one with you. You're going to choose the next section of color. If you remember my last one that I did, we've got like these green plants maybe that they're holding the vegetables. So I'm going to go ahead and choose some of these vegetables using my quick select tool. I'm going to refine the edge of the mask, and then we're going to add color to it. So you can follow along with me on this one, or if you want to pause and go ahead and do that and then skip ahead, that's fine as well. Now, before you start selecting, this is very important. You'll notice that if I start to try and select this melon right now, I'm trying to do it with my quick select, and I'm like, why is it like not snapping to the edge? It's not selecting the thing that I really want. And I can't get it to work. That's because over here in my layers panel, I've got the wrong layer selected. I'm currently on my adjustment layer, which is not going to give me what I want. I need to make sure I'm on the photo layer before I select anything, or else it's not going to be able to see what you're trying to select. Okay, so I'm on the right layer now. I've got my quick select tool selected. Feeling pretty good about life. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to try and select these vegetables using this tool. And I'm just going to kind of come up to the edge. Again, if I make any mistakes, like right there I selected his arm, I just hold down the Option key and then go over it. And that will unselect that part. And I'm going to try and get this pretty close, but not stress if it's got a few little issues. Remember, you can change your brush size by using the bracket keys on your keyboard. So sometimes you might need it to be a little bit bigger, sometimes you might need it a little smaller. Okay, after I get this selected, this melon, we're going to come over here and select the carrot tops. And I'll leave the cucumber for a different one because I don't want them all to be the exact same color of green. Okay, so I've got my vegetables selected. Most of the stuff I didn't want to select has been unselected, which is good. And now I'm going to go through that same process. First, I need to refine my selection, so I'm going to click Selected Mask. Check the Smart Radius, move this up just slightly, maybe 3 to 5, somewhere in there. Going to move the smoothness up just a bit. And then I'm going to click OK. After I have that, I'm going to add an adjustment layer, and since I have a selection made, it will only apply the adjustment layer into that selection. So we'll do the solid color adjustment layer again. And this time it asks what color do we want. So I'm going to choose a green that I think might be good. And since I'm going for sort of a faded look, I'm going to try and keep my colors a little bit faded. Click OK. And now we have the color applied, but it's not see-through. It looks kind of dumb like this. So we're going to come to our adjustment layer. And I'm going to choose, my blending modes. And I'm going to choose Overlay, which makes it so that it's see-through, it interacts with the background, and if I decide I hate that color, I can always come and double-click on this color palette here, choose something a little bit different. Okay, so what you're going to do now is you're going to go ahead and, I'm not going to make you watch me do all of this, but you're going to choose each section by color. And you're going to go through and select it using your quick mask tool or your quick selection tool. And then you're going to select and mask it to fix the edge. Add an adjustment layer. and then change the blending mode to be overlay. If you ever come in here and you make a mistake after you've added the color, and we need to, like, for example, right here, okay, on his finger, for example, I accidentally made his fingernail be green right there, and I don't want that. To fix it, all you have to do is go onto the mask, make sure that's selected, get your paintbrush, and just like with the clone project, we're just going to erase it out. So I'll put it on black, make my brush smaller, and I can just kind of erase out that green that I accidentally put on his hand. Alright, so I've gone through and colorized everything except for their skin and like their eyes and stuff. So we'll do that, but I just wanted to remind you that as you're doing this, sometimes it can be tricky with the quick select to get in there. Like when I was doing these carrots, it was pretty tricky to like get in all these little nooks and crannies to make sure that the carrots, like these stringy parts of them, would turn orange instead of the color of her dress. And like you can see on the bottom of this cucumber, I sort of like didn't select that part, so it turned to be red instead of green. If this ever happens, you can change this after the fact. The quick select is not going to ever be able to choose something that skinny. It's not that fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come onto the layer that has the red, and I'll just make sure I'm on the mask. And then using my mask paintbrush, remember paintbrushes always control masks, I'm just going to go through and kind of switch this out so that I'll paint it black and it will no longer be red once I do that. So if I come in here, it's going to just kind of like paint this back to being black and white. It erases the color from the photo basically. You can see that as I get down, I'm just making my brush be thinner and thinner and trying to be as careful as I can. But again, a little bit of imperfection is sort of part of the charm of these photographs. I'm going to get in pretty close. So you just have to use your paintbrush to kind of like customize the parts where the color should not be. If you accidentally kind of overlapped something that isn't meant to be the same color. Then you can go onto the layer that has your vegetables, which I think is... Oh, it looks like it's my bottom layer that has that. So you can just alter things using your masks. Okay, now that we're up to the part where we need to do their skin color, this is kind of the same principle. I'm going to just select as much as I can, and I have to be on that layer, the background layer. I'm going to just do my best I can to kind of make a pretty good selection of their skin. But obviously we don't want to select everything because otherwise it will just look a little bit weird. Like your face, like your eyes and your lips and everything are not all the same color as your skin. So it can look a little bit awkward if we don't leave out a few places. Now, one way to do this is going to be by switching into quick mask mode. This is the same thing as painting with a black and white paintbrush when you're on the mask. It just makes it a little bit easier for you to kind of see what is going on. So once I start to have a selection made, if I hit Q on my keyboard, it's going to give me this like red everywhere. And basically what it's saying is that where the red is, that's going to be the part that is not going to show. And then where there's no red, that part is going to have, you know, whatever effect applied to it. So you can see that like there's some problems here with his neck. So in this quick mask mode, I'm still using my paintbrush, still using a black and white brush, and I'm going to use black at this part to kind of color this out. And I'm just going to color out what I can see, and the quick mask mode sort of just lets me see what I'm doing, so I'm not just sort of painting in the darkness on the mask. The benefit of this also is that I'm not actually painting on the effect yet, I'm not making a mask yet. This quick mask mode is just to help me make the selection. So after I have it sort of looking pretty good the way that I want it to be, when I hit Q again, it takes me out of quick mask mode, and now my selection has changed according to what I just painted in the mask mode. Okay, so the quick mask mode, you just hit Q to turn it on and off, and it allows you to use the paintbrush and black and white paintbrush to kind of choose where the dancing ants are going to go instead of just having to use your quick select tool. Alright, so I'm going to go through and select the rest of his skin tone and then her skin tone, and I'm going to leave out their eyes as well. So I'm going to go back into quick mask mode, switch to the white, and I don't want like his eyeballs or his glasses or his nostrils. Oh, using my paintbrush tool. So I don't want this bit to be, I don't want his eyeballs to be flesh colored. If this is looking like way too strong, you can also come up here in your options menu and turn your opacity down. That makes it so that when you're painting, it's like a little bit weaker and it will make it a little bit more fuzzy. So I'll just go through and do this on all the features of his face. I don't want to kind of be turned flesh color. So on his mouth, maybe I'll turn it down even lower. Okay. So you can see I've gotten all my colors in. Everything's looking pretty good. And this is the point where I would save it as a JPEG and turn it in. So just as a quick review, in order to colorize different sections of what you want, what you need to do is use your quick select tool first, make a rough selection of the thing you want to add color to. Then we're going to alter our selection by clicking select and mask. This just gives us a little bit of control over the edges to make sure that it doesn't look too goofy. And it kind of smooths it out a little bit. Then you're going to add an adjustment layer that is solid color. Choose the color that should be on that layer. I don't know. And then change that layer's blending mode to be overlay, which allows us to actually see through it. If you decide you hate the color, you can always double click on it again, make any adjustments that need to be made. Alright, and then lastly, you can zoom up, and if there's a problem, for example, I accidentally grabbed some of his hair right here and his glasses, I didn't want to be flesh colored. You can always just click on the mask that belongs to that layer, get your paintbrush, and come in here close to make some manual edits yourself. Turn on my opacity. So if I didn't want his glasses selected, I would just come in here and unselect his glasses using my black paintbrush on the mask layer. So that way it looks like his glasses are actually made of metal instead of the same color as his skin. Alright, go ahead.